Hi everyone, my name is Aaron and welcome back to my channel. A couple weeks ago, the Clearwater City Council told David Miscavige to piss off in a pretty major way, and I think we should talk about it. This is the latest chapter in the story about a war David Miscavige started with the city of Clearwater back in 2017. In fact, it's a war that Miscavige started not just with the city of Clearwater, but also with the Clearwater Marine Aquarium. The world knows the Clearwater Marine Aquarium through Winter the Dolphin. The Dolphin Tale movies are about Winter. Winter is a dolphin at the Clearwater Marine Aquarium. So Miscavige went to war with Winter the Dolphin and the city of Clearwater. So what was this all about? I'll make this as quick as I can, but basically, most people watching this channel are probably familiar with the fact that Scientology has this giant base that they call the Flagland base, located right in the heart of downtown Clearwater. One of the signature properties of the Flagland base is the Fort Harrison Hotel. And just behind the Fort Harrison Hotel is another hotel Scientology owns called the Oak Cove. So behind the Fort Harrison and next to the Oak Cove is another parcel of land that was owned by the Clearwater Marine Aquarium. Now, the aquarium isn't located in downtown Clearwater. They're located closer to Clearwater Beach. But the aquarium had this property because they were considering relocating to downtown Clearwater. Once it was clear that the plans to move the aquarium to downtown were not going to work, the aquarium decided to sell this land, and they went under contract to sell it to the city of Clearwater for $4 million in change. David Miscavige is a very paranoid little fellow, and he does not consider it acceptable for anybody to develop something right next to the Flagland base. He considers that a security threat to the base. He doesn't want anything built taller than the main Flagland base buildings. He doesn't want anybody to be able to look down on those buildings. And he just doesn't want non-Scientologists around the base, and he'll do anything in his power to keep the development in downtown Clearwater to the absolute bare minimum, because he just doesn't have any use for non-Scientologists around that base. So the first thing Miscavige tried to do to prevent this lot from being sold to the city and therefore prevent it from being developed was to approach the Clearwater Marine Aquarium directly. The then CEO's name was David Yates. So he approached David Miscavige is approaching David Yates, and offered the aquarium as much as $15 million for this lot. And as I just said, the aquarium was under contract to sell it to the city for like $4.25 million. David Yates declined to sell the property to Miscavige and to Scientology. It's not that he couldn't have used the $15 million. It's that David Yates and the aquarium has a long-standing history of partnership with the city of Clearwater. And this was prime real estate right on the bluff, for those of you familiar with Clearwater, right on the bluff overlooking the water. And he thought that for the good of the city, this land needed to stay in the hands of the city so that the city could use this land for its own future development efforts, or redevelopment efforts as the case may be. Once David Yates refused to sell to Miscavige, Miscavige's next strategy was to basically go to the city and say, hey city, hey city council, council members and the mayor, if you will back out of the contract to buy this property from David Yates, thereby forcing him to sell it to me, Miscavige Scientology, then let me show you all the wonderful things I will do for downtown Clearwater. At that time, the Clearwater City Council basically refused to do what Miscavige was asking. So the City Council and the Clearwater Marine Aquarium moved forward and closed this deal and sold this lot of land to the city of Clearwater instead of to Scientology. Once all of that went down and Miscavige didn't get his way, he went on the warpath and started the latest chapter in his ongoing war with the city of Clearwater. And at that time, this was back in 2017, started a war with the Clearwater Marine Aquarium as well. Here's some of the information that was reported in the Tampa Bay Times by Tracy McManus back in 2017. Tracy says, the Church of Scientology has launched a statewide campaign blasting the ethics and financial practices of the Clearwater Marine Aquarium, a move that follows on the aquarium's recent decision not to sell the church a prized downtown property. On Monday, the church delivered to the board a scathing 7-page letter and more than 250 pages of supporting documentation questioning the nonprofit's economic impact and financial responsibility. So Miscavige and the Church of Scientology were trying to call the Clearwater Marine Aquarium onto the carpet for exaggerating their economic impact to the city of Clearwater and accusing them of financial irresponsibility. If that's not the pot calling the kettle black. The formal complaint, which was also sent to Attorney General Pam Bondi, State Attorney General at that time, sent to the State Auditor General, and sent to legislative leaders, is not going unchallenged by the aquarium CEO, David Yates. David Yates is quoted as saying, "We want to be good neighbors to everybody, but we do not intend to be bullied at the same time. Everything they wrote is either false or completely out of context or inflammatory." The church's move came 2 business days after the Clearwater City Council voted unanimously to buy a 1.4-acre vacant property from the aquarium. The $4.25 million sale closed the next day. And keep in mind, all this information is from a few years ago. The aquarium, which is in the midst of a fundraising campaign for a $50 million renovation of its facility on Island Estates, rejected the church's $15 million offer for the property 3 weeks earlier in favor of selling to the city. So get that. David Yates, he was in the middle of having to raise $50 million to do a whole renovation of the aquarium. By the way, those renovations are now completed. And even though he needed to raise $50 million, he turned down $15 million from Scientology just to do the right thing and keep this property in the hands of the city. Someone might say, well, oh God, he lost out on at least $10 million of pure profit from Miscavige. No, what actually happened is the community was so glad to see David stand up and take on Scientology and not be bullied by Miscavige that it resulted in tens of millions of dollars of donations to the Clearwater Marine Aquarium. What David unintentionally proved back in 2017 is that standing up to Scientology, not being afraid to call them out on bad behavior, not being afraid to put Miscavige in his place, is the absolute best thing any politician or community leader could do in Clearwater. And not just in Clearwater. I'm sure this would translate to national politics. You know, the senator or the representative who leads the effort to demand the IRS review Scientology's tax-exempt status is going to be a folk hero. Donations are going to flow into their re-election campaigns like you could never imagine. And I don't mean to get too far ahead of myself here. So here's some other quotes from the article. The commission chair, Janet Long, said Scientology's effort was too little too late and a clear retaliation by the church for the city buying land that the church coveted. That's how the Scientologists operate, Janet Long said. It's very clear, coming on the heels of the city council vote, that their noses are out of joint and they're upset about it and they're trying to intimidate county government. Oh, Janet Long with some strong language. Let's see. David Yates said that the sale of the aquarium's land to the city was a show of commitment to a long-standing partnership rather than an affront to the church. The church's reaction was unwarranted. So taking this letter to the Pinellas County Commissioners wasn't the only thing Miscavige tried to do. He went on an all-out assault against David Yates and the aquarium, tried to get their funding cut at the city level, the county level, the state level, tried to interfere with their fundraising practices, put out an entire, I hope I don't have this wrong, one of their Freedom magazines, they put out some entire publication slandering David Yates, slandering the aquarium, tried to get him fired from his job. You know, the typical overblown reaction. I guess it would be libel, not slander. But anyway, the typical overblown reaction that we've come to expect from the Church of Scientology. Scientology also initiated a boycott of all non-Scientologist-owned businesses in downtown Clearwater to try to punish the city of Clearwater for not allowing it to procure this land. So they initiated this boycott. That didn't really accomplish much because there aren't enough Scientologists in Clearwater for a boycott to really mean anything. And then Miscavige cut off all communication with the city for the next 2 years. No communication whatsoever. And then what Miscavige did was to organize a buying spree of all available properties in downtown Clearwater, in the core downtown business district, and then some. He organized through church entities and just public Scientologists for about 100 properties to be purchased for roughly $100 million in cash. Many of those properties weren't even on the market. Many of these properties were purchased for 2, 3, 4 times the market value, all cash, really as a way to punish the city and get leverage over the city so that maybe they would be a little more amenable to having a conversation about letting Miscavige acquire this aquarium lot. In fact, one of the last things Miscavige did say to either the city manager or the city attorney is, you know, I think we're going to bide our time and we're going to wait for the new council to be seated. And we're going to see if maybe they're more friendly in talks with us about this lot. Well, by the time the new city council was seated, Mark Bunker was on that city council. And needless to say, that council was not more friendly to Miscavige as far as conversations on acquiring that property. But Miscavige, true to form, was not willing to give up. So he popped his head out of the little hole he'd been hiding in, and he opened up communication with the city. and opened up a line of discussion about maybe doing a property swap. These discussions were going on between Miscavige and some of the city staff at the same time that the city of Clearwater was getting ready to send out an RFP nationwide to develop these 3 huge lots that it owns on the waterfront, one of which is the aquarium lot. So at the same time that the city's about to send out these RFPs, or one RFP for 3 different lots, or 3 different RFPs, I don't know exactly how it's structured. At the same time that the city of Clearwater is doing that, Miscavige is dragging his feet on this conversation about a possible land swap. So because these conversations with Miscavige had not been concluded, the language in the RFP about the aquarium lot was going to include language saying that this property may still be subject to a land swap. And if you understand how RFPs work and how much time and money it takes to actually submit a proposal for an RFP, you can imagine that a developer might be more reluctant to put in the work on a proposal if the language says, oh yeah, by the way, we're still thinking of just doing a trade and this property might not even be in play. I mean, it damages the level of interest that Clearwater is going to get from developers nationwide in response to this RFP. And that is absolutely what Miscavige's intention was all along. Everything that's happening right now between David Miscavige and the city of Clearwater with respect to this property is a continuation of the strategy Miscavige had in mind 3 years ago. So as of a few weeks ago, Miscavige still thought he was in this fight, executing his strategy to acquire this land from the city of Clearwater to prevent and prohibit development around his base. And the Clearwater City Council stepped up and said, not so fast, little fella. The Clearwater City Council said definitively, the window Miscavige had to do a swap is over. If he was serious about doing a deal, he could have done a deal anytime in the last 3 years. And they said, we think it's time for you to take a timeout. In fact, why don't you go over there and sit in the corner for a little bit? This is an issue I was personally very interested in. So I did go to this council meeting, and anybody can speak on any topic at a council meeting for 3 minutes, and that's what I did. Here's what I had to say.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to see each of you. I'm Smith-Levin. I live at 1615 Harvard Street, and I do have a couple thoughts about the RFP language indicating that the CMA lot is still subject to a land swap. First off, if it is possible to do a deal with Miscavige, that would be a net gain for the city financially and strategically, I would 100% support such a deal. But as far as these current talks with Miscavige, assuming there are current talks happening, I think we have to acknowledge that considering his motivations, he is going to stretch these talks out for as long as the city allows him to stretch it out before he pounces. It is in Miscavige's interest to create uncertainty about how the city is going to move forward with development on the bluff over the next 7 months. That uncertainty buys him a lot of time, and it harms the city's RFP. Him dragging his feet thus far has caused the city to include language in the RFP that is all but guaranteed to have a negative impact on the amount of interest we're going to get from developers nationwide. That is not a coincidence. It's part of the intention. So I believe it would be in the city's best interest to not only remove the language from the RFP, but specifically state clearly that Miscavige's window to do this deal closes on January 11th when the RFP gets published. If we are to consider Miscavige's intentions, Miscavige is against any development that brings more non-Scientologists to the area. It's only because non-Scientologists in this area don't help Scientology. You cannot get into Scientology at the Flag Land Base. Many people don't understand this. You can get into Scientology in Tampa. You can go a few miles down the road and get into Scientology in Bel Air. You cannot join Scientology in downtown Clearwater. Non-Scientologists are just considered a security threat to the Flag Land Base. And believe me, I know, I spent years living and working on the Flag Land Base when I was still in Scientology. Now, the city council gets criticized sometimes, and even the staff, for not doing enough to stand up to Scientology. And I know the vast majority of that criticism is unfair and unwarranted. And I think what we're discussing here is something solid and positive that the city can do, not only to protect its own interests with respect to the quality of this RFP, but to limit Miscavige's ability to interfere with future development plans, because that is the goal. Delaying and interfering is the goal, and I think we all know that. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you.
And here's what Councilmember Mark Bunker had to say.
Councilmember Bunker.
I'd like to agree with
Councilmember Hamilton on the language about the land swap. I think we definitely do need to know, are we going to do a land swap with the Church of Scientology, which is the one that we've primarily been talking about? You know, we should know that before we send this out. They've had more than 3 years now to come up with a plan and to negotiate. Miscavige said back in 2017, when he stopped talking to us, that he would wait for the next council. Well, we're here and we want to move on. You would think by now he'd have some idea of what he wants and what he'll give us. We have the unique problem in this city of having Scientology that has blocked many of the people who might have been interested in putting in a proposal. But I think it's also very important that we send a message to Scientology. Give us an answer now, or we're moving on and we're doing this. Because we don't need Scientology to make the downtown prosper. And we shouldn't allow them to get in our way. We just need to keep letting the people know that there's no worries about coming down here. Scientology, as Mr. Mayor, you have said, they're not going to kidnap you. They're also not going to be trying to recruit you. If we come down and reclaim the downtown and shop and dine downtown, it's the last thing that David Miscavige wants. We can just, by coming and having fun and enjoying the downtown, make a real change.
And here's what Councilmember Hoyt Hamilton had to say.
My approach on this part of this language, I think this ought to be taken out. We've talked about land swap, we've heard land swap, but nothing has ever come of it. While this RFP is on the market, land swap should be off the table in my book. The opportunity to discuss and provide us with an opportunity to consider a land swap has been there for how many years, and it has not happened. We're putting this out to the development community all over the country. I don't think there should be any opportunity for a land swap to come forward while this RFP is on the market. I would personally like to see this language taken out. I wouldn't like to see land swap anywhere in this RFP. We've got to provide something that really sparks their interest. And when you're putting in something that says, well, they've talked about a land swap and that might still come forward, why am I going to even put my effort into it? 200 RFPs that I've got on my desk. So, that's why I think along this line, I think this language needs to come out totally.
And here's the city council unanimously voting to correct the language in the RFP and to basically tell Miscavige to piss off.
I will make a motion that all reference to land swap be deleted from the RFP. That means that as of 8:45 tonight, entertaining of a land swap opportunity will not take place until this RFP process has run its course.
Any questions? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
So there you have it. I thought that was a wonderful thing. I guarantee you that was not a good night for Miscavige. That was not a good night for the OSA staff members here at the Flagland base. Miscavige has these crazy expectations that people give a damn what he thinks or has to say in Clearwater. And the truth is, the politicians, the elected leaders, are definitely starting to understand that Scientology may have a lot of money, they may have a lot of property. They do not have any political influence other than what they can purchase through lobbyists and lawyers. Mark Bunker's election last year to the city council proved that Scientology can only get about 600 people to the polls. Scientology wants people to believe that they control some voting block in Clearwater of like 15,000 members. 15,000 is the number Scientology says for how many Scientologists live in Clearwater. Nothing could be further from the truth. In all of Tampa Bay, that includes St. Pete, Clearwater, Tampa, Palm Harbor, Dunedin, Largo, maybe there's 4,000 Scientologists. At the Flagland base, maybe there's 1,500, 2,000 people, maybe. But most of those people can't vote. They're foreign nationals, they're here on religious visas, they're not registered. They literally only got 600 people to the polls to vote against Mark Bunker. It's really pathetic. And even though their presence in Clearwater has an impact, just by virtue of their presence, it has an impact of making people think twice sometimes about coming to Clearwater, they don't actually have influence I'm talking about the kind of influence that allows them to get something done. I think some people are confused into thinking Scientology has more influence than they do in Clearwater because they buy up all these properties. But buying properties is not influence. Nobody can stop somebody from buying a property. I mean, do you get what I'm saying? It doesn't take influence to purchase properties, especially when you're doing it secretly through LLCs and lawyers and some public Scientologists. Only time will tell us what Miscavige's next tantrum will be. He did recently reveal to the public Scientologists here in Clearwater that they're looking to build a new advanced organization here in Clearwater. In Scientology, an advanced organization is one that delivers the OT levels. Currently here in Clearwater, the Sandcastle Hotel down by the water is the advanced organization. That's where the OT levels are delivered. Miscavige is talking about building a new advanced org and turning the Sandcastle Hotel into strictly a hotel as opposed to also an advanced org. So I am sure something relating to the new advanced org will be part of Miscavige's next tantrum, but we won't know until we hear it from him, I guess. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe